Blessed love and peace. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. 道可道非常道，名可名非常名。Já Rastafari. Deus nos de que sincere santo vaquito no mentu. Vahegu salam. Baruch atah Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lachem min haaretz. Amen. Kyrie eleison sefamas tu salvajatahi sabe sata bavantu sukitata. Fagabia. Makwaba upendo na amani. Fikiri nesalami. Chinta dam per me leba of me womajiga. Ubuntu shubona fakitka. Sheshe. Como senida. Domo arigato. Pelo mayelo wakatoko toko doko shingun. Gomanigan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jame atafana. Mado no nam shanti 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 amen. We're mukbanging it. So a few things to share that are not related to recent collisions per se, directly. A different type of collision. Marriage. Still on it. As much as I can be. By the grace of the Most High. So one thought is this: how am I able to make all these marriage propositions, proposals all the time? Every time I see a woman, marriage proposal. How can that be genuine? How can that be serious? How can that be taken seriously and genuine? Is it actually meant? Is it actual this and the other? So yes. Now obviously people have a different understanding or whatever about marriage and methodology and process therein and thereof and there too. This is genuine though. And to put it in perspective, almost dropped it. To put it in perspective, here's some thoughts, some insight. Some insight about the experience. So first of all, one joint is this. If a man is, before I say it, how often do I do that? I'm about to say something, I say, it's this. Oh yeah, by the way, I do that frequently, don't I? Anyway, my personal practice or my personal behavior in terms of offering a marriage proposal in addition is genuine to this day. It's not taken lightly. I might do it immediately on the spot depending on what the circumstances are. And with even very, very modest expectation of there being an immediate or otherwise acceptance, affirmation of the proposal. It's still genuine though, and I guess I'm going to do something else before I get into the examples. Part of the nature of a marriage proposition, a marriage proposal, is that particularly when a man is doing it, one, obviously a man is making an offering of himself. He is opening himself, vulnerability, evaluation, criticism, and otherwise, valuation, devaluation. But in opening himself in that way, he's also making an offering of himself, offering his attention, offering his support, and additionally, even merely in just giving the proposition, giving the proposal. And when he's offering himself, just by the nature of it, he is losing a portion of himself. He is relinquishing a portion of himself. How he thinks about himself, what he knows about himself, what he values about himself, materiality and otherwise. So just in offering a marriage proposal to a woman, to her family or otherwise, every time, to differing degrees of severity and intensity, but every time he is opening himself, he is offering himself, and he's losing a part of himself every time. So how can a man do that, like myself, and like be genuine and like do it so frequently or whatever, seemingly? Purpose. But before getting to that, examples of what I'm talking about. Now, in actuality, when we look at it and we're honest about it, when a man asks a woman out on a date, let's go get some coffee, I'd like to take you out to dinner, da 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 da, is he not saying, I have an interest in marrying you? Let's talk about the details. Is that not the same thing? If he's being honorable, is that not what he's saying when he's saying to a woman, let's go out for coffee? This isn't work. This is personal. Is that not a marriage proposal? Understood to mean stages, but is that not a marriage proposal? Is he not opening himself and offering himself and relinquishing himself? When we recognize that, when a man just communicates an interest in a woman, and it's and it's honorable. Is he not? Is that not what he's saying? I would say yes. So do we. All right. Here's a flip side. It's a flip side, and it's a leap. So this is it. If that's on the man's side, and even when he's just communicating an interest in a woman, let's go for a walk. Marriage proposal. Here's a flip side and the hyper side. When we have a proficient spiritual awareness, and that might sound pejorative, and try to think of another way of framing it, but when we attain to a certain, that's not better, but anyways, there is a certain spiritual awareness, and it's not just a random, it's when we reach a certain spiritual awareness of just like the actuality and the truth and facts about life and what's going on. What we're able to recognize is this, and it's scary, particularly for dudes. On the one side, when a man is communicating interest in a woman, that essentially being him communicating his interest in marriage, and whatever he's proposing is, when it's honorable, towards that purpose, towards that result. When we attain certain spiritual awareness, each occasion that a woman simply presents herself within the immediate realm of a man, she is communicating her interest in marriage with him. Odie. That's rather presumptuous. That's rather whatever. That's it. But what if there are multiple men in the room? Is she saying that for each one? That is the nature of competition, contention, as well as diplomacy amongst men. To be able to navigate that circumstance in some type of copacetic way. But hey, it's very primal and primordial. Which calls upon a man to be increasingly disciplined and concentrated. Because that type of awareness avails itself to very heightened senses of temptation, frustration, and otherwise. However, again, this is the nature of life. Just like peacocks in the forest, strutting feathers to procreate. It's the garden. We got further things to share along these lines. Because in that competition, and additionally, in that vying, there is the susceptibility of entanglements, of devaluations, of insecurities, of jealousies, of hostilities, and other types of afflictions. That is why it's further beneficial for a man to be disciplined, to be focused, to be purposeful, to be genuine. I'm starting to get into like a whole like ramble thing at the moment. There is further specific joints to share, but I can see like, first of all, I'm still fatigued. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep in the past 3 days. So that lends itself to a diffusion of concentration, which lends itself to further just indiscriminate verbosity. Then further, fatigue and whatever else in going through the exercises of that verbosity. I'm going to endeavor to focus on what the initial consideration is, and then just like articulate that, and then focus on this, and maybe do something that's further energizing. That involves less devices. So next thing I'm getting on is valuation. The Buddha talks about how it's when people are talking about marriage, when the conversation of who's equal to and who's less than or worse than others becomes increasingly heightened. And one of the reasons why men and women are fairly fearful, shy, and otherwise about communicating interest in others, because when we communicate interest in others, we are availing ourselves to the valuation of others, how others value us, and acknowledging certain legitimacy in how others value us, so that if they don't value us the way we do, we can't just say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because they're who's so that and so, because we're already submitting ourselves to that valuation from the other by communicating our interest. And then that becomes the whole reject game of like, oh, so and so didn't like them, and da da da. And then people's market value becomes affected. Very sensitive. That is very sensitive. So that's just part of the game. That's part of the endeavor, the act, whatever. So when I make these propositions, these proposals, it's genuine, but at the same time, it's not as much of a risk of ego or valuation, because one, I do this to fulfill a purpose. It's not what I want. It's not what I'm willing. I do have will to a certain extent, but it's not for a manifestation of my personal volition, conquest, accomplishment, achievement, wants, wishes, dreams, aspirations, or otherwise. It's to fill a purpose. It is to fulfill a purpose in this life, a commandment. So my acceptance or rejection or whatever else is less consequential, because the purpose of it is not for my own personal confirmation or acceptance. So in that respect, how I value myself is not based upon even remotely what other people think about me or how other people value me per se. So my approach, my proposal to a woman, there's less volatility based upon the woman's response. There may be certain ego elements. Ego is feeding me at this very moment. So we need ego in this life, but at the same time, it's how much we rely upon it as a sense of self and valuation. So I try to be mindful of the woman and her family's experience and comfortability and everything, what the family might be accustomed to, but less concerned about how things are perceived by others, and just very matter of factly. So I value myself in terms of my practice of honesty and compassion and modesty, albeit with amidst this binge on some processed foods, comfort, convenience, in addition to energy. So, valuing ourselves and recognizing that when we value ourselves on the things that are most important in this life, the actions, words, and thoughts of others are less consequential. And thus, when we have that guidance, that direction, that proclivity for being in relationship with others, when we venture or when we endeavor to be in relationship, it's less a matter of that a personal will or accomplishment. It is the spiritual path, and it's a coalescence of spiritual path. So when we put it in perspective, it's like rejection is not even a thing. It's simply a matter of confirmation. And until that confirmation, just continuing to search. Plain and simple. In that process of confirmation, we do adjust how we value ourselves personally, respectively, because when we build a relationship with somebody else and the temporal experience of that other person, we're going to see ourselves in a different way. that is natural and actually healthy when it's natural and healthy. Anyways, I'm going on a little bit of a side foray at the moment about that. But main thing here is recognizing how we value ourselves and to focus on valuing ourselves in a healthy way for things that are the priorities within ourselves that actually are meaningful and conducive to our well-being and the well-being of others. And how that factor, that methodology evaluation, those characteristics evaluation are significantly autonomous from the opinions, the actions, the words, the thoughts of others. And that helps us to be further secure in ourselves, less stressed about what others think, and further patient when being disrespected or devalued or otherwise. That's okay. That's consequential for ourselves anyways. Cool. Now, I mentioned before in previous joints about finding those things that we value within ourselves and being true to that, because there so often in this life, so much in this life, we are discouraged and tempted and threatened into valuing ourselves for things that we don't value about ourselves, whether it's by our physical appearance, our sexual attractiveness, even how smart we are and what we can do with those smarts, how strong we are physically and what we can do with that physical strength. We might appreciate about that about ourselves. We might be able to do things about ourselves, but at the same time, like, those things aren't necessarily the greatest things we think about ourselves. But when other people do that and want to reward us for it and hype us about it and everything, be careful about that, because that's pimpalicious. And that can lead us in a unhealthy way, even in just how we see ourselves. And then how we see ourselves, meaning initially how we value ourselves, but then eventually where we find ourselves in life surrounding us, what conditions or circumstances, people around us, and additionally based upon the decisions we make in valuing ourselves that way, and what we accept as compensation, and what kind of commitments we make based upon that type of evaluation. So anyways, valuing ourselves for healthy things, and then finding, investing, and valuing people who also value ourselves for those things. That's very key. Finding people, investing in people, investing in relationship with people who value us in the same way that we value ourselves, because it's very easy to get close and connected and committed to people who value us for things that are not healthy about ourselves. If someone is attractive, and people just value, if a woman's attractive and a man just values her because she's attractive, not because she's nice, not because she's honest, not because of she's caring or other these other things, but she just likes because she's pretty, and because of that, all he cares about is her looking pretty, and invests and is very supportive for her to be pretty, gives her nice clothes, and is always complimenting, and additionally, but it's only about her being pretty. It's not talking about her family, isn't talking about her heritage, her language, where she comes from. It's only about her being pretty. It might be very generous in giving her gifts, house, marriage, anything else, because she's pretty and for her to be pretty. But whenever she tries to do something else, talk about something else, no, don't talk about that. Let's just talk about how pretty you're so pretty. A lifetime of that, it can be nasty. And the further one walks in that path, the further it takes to get out of that. So that's just one example. And the same thing goes for smarts. Oh, you're so smart. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Give me some advice about that. Okay, but how about let's just like be nature. No, why do you want to talk about nature? That's a waste of time. Give me some more ideas. Tell me how to get out of this problem. Oh, you so strong? Yo, move this for me. Do this for me. Yo, you should do this. Like, again, it's and we. All right, so I've said that. So find the things that we value about ourselves genuinely, thoroughly, most significantly, and then finding people who value that for ourselves. And those people may not be rich, because that could be all different than the nature. Um, People might not have the same amount to offer, might not even be as enthusiastic or whatever, but just kind of like quietly support you. Let's learn to treasure that, to recognize that, and to treasure that, and to live with that. Yesterday, I meet some brethren um, that I describe as being suits in the making. Hallelujah. Let me talk about finance, and additionally, and it's a long day already. Fatigue level on high. And the brother mentioned how energized I seem and talking about what I'm talking about. So appreciation. However, still a little bit stumbly in my speech. And to be honest, I find myself somewhat antagonistic, speaking antagonistically to the kinfolk, because maybe a little bit like fatigue, maybe being experiencing some, oh, I can't say insecurity, but maybe challenge. These are corporate raiders here in training to be corporate raiders. Excuse me. So I may have been somewhat further contentious than I may otherwise be, particularly amongst youth. Because I remember asking a question, and then after the brethren are extremely generous in responding to that question, very respectfully, very thoughtfully, I share some response, and I'm trying to be constructive, share some additional insights, things I would have liked to learn or know at that time when I was in that same exact position. And in doing that, in a number of ways, I kind of like basically negated or disagreed with brethren, and that wasn't the best of things. Anyways, it wasn't bad, but I could see myself doing it. I could hear myself doing it. At one point, I told one brethren that like he was drinking the Kool-Aid. Oh, come on, man! They're young and respectful, and that's how you're gonna be. It wasn't bad at all, but it wasn't my best. So somewhat disappointed. But what I was thinking about, and what I think afterwards, is that the brethren talked about value, or we got onto the topic of value, somewhat so. Actually, I don't even know if we got on the topic. I thought about that because finance, and that's what it was. I thought about it, and we were starting to get into like the concept, but then at that point, the bus trip was getting to a conclusion, and we talked about capital. We talked about alternative capital as like a tangible frame of reference, but then we also started to get into like the notions of abstract capital, like political capital, and additionally. And so one of the things that I think about slightly at that moment, but there are a lot of thoughts I was trying to focus on the most prudent. But in addition to that, it's just about valuation and taking that concept, that finance concept of valuation, arbitrage, and additionally about currencies, and then applying it to one's own self. What does one value about oneself? And how does one invest within that characteristic of oneself that one values? How does one cultivate relationships and invest in relationships with people who also value us for that? The brethren was talking about doing things that we enjoy in this life, which is beautiful and very much encouraged. And even though it might sound like I might have like pish-posh that, didn't intend that. I think it's recognized too, because I kind of translated what he was talking about in terms of doing something that's meaningful and fulfilling. He kind of like agreed, like that's what he's endeavoring to say. I know the training because I've trained like that when I'm that age, and it's a very specific like framework of conceptualization. And so I was working to introduce a further way of understanding and conceiving life, and how to apply that perspective to the immediate circumstances that the brethren are in. Not even necessarily with the intention of like kinfolk abandoning their course and doing something and becoming hippies and living out in a mountain commune. But organically, intuitively, autonomously, finding a way for the healthiness within whatever I suggest of that perspective to be applied and manifested within the kinfolk's path. Amidst all the kinfolk's relations. All right. So that was one thing about valuation, because I think that's one bridge, that's one conceptual bridge to broach that subject, to broach that topic, value, particularly in that context, talking about valuation, and then basically just what I just said. We did have some traction in our talk about currency. I think that was beneficial. And here this is the other thing too, just to be honest. It's not, and that's the thing. This is what it is, actually, to be honest. Like there is a differentiation. Like they're training to be corporate suits in the making, and so that's not the point of contention. It's a matter of like the policies and additionally, and I think the brethren can like really appreciate that kind of consideration. But even in being suits and training, that's other than what it is. To be honest, can I repeat myself again? What it is, what had happened was, it's kinfolk whose motors, whose gears are moving very fast, and I share something. Mine move moderately. I have moderately, my speed is moderate. I can get in higher speeds, but when I get in higher speeds, I get out of my comfort zone. I feel less balanced, and that's when there's that tendency of like saying things that are not necessarily in my comfort zone. So, and that's what I'm talking about. So when talking with young brethren, if I'm talking to older brethren whose gears move fast, actually it's somewhat easier. Why? Because usually, particularly who's older than me these days, but particularly with talking with older brethren whose gears move fast, usually them brethren are significantly corrupted already. And that's not shade, but I mean just facts. So because of that, even though the gears move fast, usually it's a very interesting thing. Usually what it is that I can offset that kind of like experience by just innately, intuitively, like getting into the gear of guilt, and kind of just like I don't have to say anything, but that's how it slows things naturally. Like just like I know what you're in, I know what game you're in, one way or the other. Just by being again a citizen and an adult and being in it for a number of years, I already know. I don't have like the people say the receipts, but I already know your game. And I'm not to be antagonistic or superior, or whatever, but that just intrinsically slows the gears up enough with like involving like other elements of like the spiritual and otherwise, where particularly if I might say some of my own background or make some own reference where it just slows people up to be like, oh, hold up, no, he might actually know something, so let me hold up. And that's one thing in terms of like slowing things up, the gears. The other thing also is that when people are older, when it's particularly older men, like there's less a matter of like trying to learn anything or trying to like listen or anything. It's all about what can I get out of this joint. And so it's not a learning process. It's a conquest, and that's the context. And when it's that situation, again, we frame ourselves in such a certain way where we already know, and then we share as we can. When talking with young people, when it is significantly a learning thing, and there is a genuine affinity, like, yo, teach me, I'd like to know. That kind of trust within ourselves puts on a much further weight. And that's when, particularly when working with gears that are faster, and the kinfolk are moving gears, so we say something, and the young brethren are like, yeah, and then boom, 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 and they can think of like 5 different angles or directions about that, and so then we have to like respond to that. And if kinfolk
if the young kinfolk see like we might hesitate or we might take some time, they might see themselves, oh, this guy is slow. I got much further skills than he does, so let me just figure out what he knows at the moment and then just continue on. And so, in perceiving that from this side, it becomes a thing. Oh, I gotta keep my speed up, whatever, just to keep this guy brethren's attention or respect or whatever else. So that's the further thing. It's other than just like a corporate thing. It's a matter of the gears working and then like keeping up with. And it's the gears working fast, but also the gears being willing to learn, and that puts much further weight on the other side. So that's something for me. And plus, we're on a bus. There's a brief window. I'm initiating the conversation. So I put all that onus on myself too. Anyways, that's some of it. This is even guerrilla mode. I'm uncertain if there is an actual animal that's called uncouth, but this would be uncouth mode. We are now traveling through the wilderness, and if you're very quiet, if we turn down the engine somewhat, we might be able to see that elusive creature that is known as uncouth. We must be very quiet, though. That's kind of funny. Valuation. So, that's part of the consideration, and I think that's what we got to share. So, as we say, do, that's the joint. Do. To be honest, can't even, that's like a multiple reference, a reference upon reference, references upon references, without being able to name any particular one. What I can name is that this is a double stuck slice of cheese. Oh, he's such a, what is it? Not cheesy. Oh, no, yeah, that's what it is. You cheat later for your cheese eating, blah, blah, blah. Such as the case may be. I'm not from Detroit, Motown. I am from Ohio. And I am from Africa. And I know something about Africa. I've been to Africa. And I love Africa. I love Africa. That's an adjusted Jerry Maguire reference right there. So congratulations. Oh, who this is? Uh-huh. So, this is the scene. We still got some slices, and still tired. Still slightly uncouth. Do I just keep on mukbanging? It seems like a mukbang should, by definition, include some type of consumption of cannabis. N'est-ce pas? Been a while since I talked Francais. Francais. Been a while since I done talk Francais. That's not Creole. The The kingdoms of Alabama. How about that? The kingdoms of Alabama. Solution, direction, suggestion, liberation for those with such inclinations. If it's not repatriation, the kingdoms of Alabama. If not, what are you thinking? A little strong? A little truth? I feel hurried. All right. Here's an idea. For those who are familiar with The Truman Show. For those who are less familiar, I got an oil stain on my t-shirt now. It was dirty enough. It was dingy enough. Now I got a big old oil stain. Oil stain. I got a big old oil stain. White bread. That is the marshmallow diet. A loaf of bread, midnight, a loaf of white bread at midnight will result in the formation of a marshmallow on the part of the actor, the consumer, the protagonist, perhaps. So, the thing about your Truman Show. For those who are less privy. Back in the 90s, Jim Carrey is the star feature of The Truman Show. I'm trying to think of the name of the director. The actor who played the director. Ed somebody. No cap, just trying to figure out. Anyway, in this story, in this narrative, the protagonist, Truman, is unknowingly, unbeknownst to him, the feature of a reality TV show where all the actors, all the people in his life are actors. They all know it's a TV show, except for him. He thinks it's actual life. Everybody in his town where he grows up, born and raised, and additionally, are actors. Since he's born, I think he was an orphan. That's the narrative, the story, the storyline. So, since his birth, like since the very beginning, he was hired or he was enlisted to be the feature of this um, reality TV show. His mother, his parents, his family, everybody is um, an actor on this TV show. Everybody knows it's a show except for him. His best friend through life since boyhood, actor. And so the story goes on how to describe him learning about that and kind of venturing to get outside of the TV show. That is his life. It's all the studio. Literally, it's like this huge studio. So he physically, literally endeavors, literally in the narrative, to get out of the show, to get into actual life. I think there are some words given for it or whatever, but it's something that very much resonates within the psyche of American culture, American people during that time. Right as the internet was maybe getting started, but reality TV and cable television was very popular, and that difficulty of being able to discern what is make-believe and what is actual life. Who in life is actually genuine and who is just like on an agenda. When the internet hits, that semblance gets blown out the water and it just becomes a blur at that point, to be honest. And that's where things have been for the past generation. So I think the 90s was like the final generation, the fifth generation of electricity, that still had a direct experience, a direct life experience of actual life, and being able to tell the difference between what is staged, what is like fake, and what is actual life. I think the sixth generation, what people call millennials, lost a sense of that. Now it still had an awareness of it, still like could see new people who had that, but didn't have it oneself. And because of that, and amidst that, having a certain nihilism of like knowing like this is not actuality, but at the same time not knowing what actuality is. And because of that, there's an existential despondency. Whatever, it's all lost. Whatever. And the seventh generation of electricity, what people call now Z or whatever else, is perceiving the theater, the stage, as the actuality itself, and is oblivious to what actuality is. And that's not a dig. That's no cap. That's just what's observed. But wait, there's more. There's further. Now we got an advanced level of actuality TV. In this advanced version of The Truman Show, same basic situation. There's one person who isn't supposed to know, and everybody else is an actor. However, in this scenario, not only is everybody else an actor, now, in addition to that, all the actors are provided with incentives and missions to get the actor to do certain things. Whether it's to tell a lie, or whether it's to steal something, or whether it's to say something insultive or disrespectful to somebody, whether it's to smack somebody in the face, whether it's all different types of little assignments and missions and everything. And if they get the actor to do that, they get compensated. Or maybe it's like further gangster. And that if they get the actor to do it, then the gangsters won't hurt that other actor's family members or whatever else. So, that's nasty, but this is a different movie. But next level. So now it's just a matter of keeping the facade or the illusion, but it's a matter of like actually manipulating behavior within the illusion. So in the original film, there were actually commercials. The actors would promote certain products as advertisements in actual life, in front of Truman. In additionally, so the world audience that knows this is a program is introduced to those products. So that was basically part of the feature in that storyline. So in this storyline, rather than just like commercials, it's a matter of the actors being compensated and people making bets. People are like, yo, I bet you he couldn't do this. I bet you couldn't do that. So it becomes a high stakes thing. People are watching it. People see what happens. People see the actors, know who the actors are, what the actors are trying to do. The actors might have conflicting missions. Like one actor is trying to get the Truman to go to a movie. The other actor is trying to get Truman to go bowling. So which actor is going to be able to be further influential? Oh, that's intriguing right there. Interesting. That might make for a nice show. But that's what it is. And the stakes can be very high and very contingent, so that in actual life, it's like gangster factions like working against each other to like get their actor or actors to have that type of influence on the actor. So like can get very contentious amongst the gangsters, the syndicates that are endeavoring to influence the actions and even words and thoughts of the actor. So that's the advanced version of the Truman Show. And wait, there's further. Because right there, that's a lot right there. But even further than that, how about this one? That there are multiple Truman Shows that simultaneously exist. There might be different studio stages, and they're all happening autonomously from each other, but simultaneously, so that the world audience can watch either one. So that becomes a factor. There's also the scenario where there's an intersection between the studio stages. So, like occasionally, an actor in one actuality TV encounters or shares the same space with another actor of another actual type TV program. Everybody on all the different sides, except for those two, know that it's all a show, and that now it's a combination of shows merging with each other. That's like next level. And then with that, like all the different manipulations and intentionalities and competitions and bets and manipulations. Can that one actor from that show find a way of merging the two shows and then influencing the actor of the other show to connect with the protagonist of this show? Ooh. Intricate plot twists. So there's that. Now we go even further. And in this step, in going further, we actually go within. We go into the interior to recognize that this is the actuality today at this moment. That we are each that Truman Show. And on one level, everyone around us knows that, knows it's a show, except for ourselves. Know everything that's going on at this moment. Right now, I was just a second ago, I was the only person that I could see in this life. Just until a second ago. Everybody else that I know in life, and additionally, is located someplace else. In some physical space that I'm less aware of at this moment. And could, for all I know, be in the same room together. All the thousands of people that I know could be in some theater at this moment. Or maybe some stadium. and watching this and like consulting with their directors, assistant directors, and getting guidance about like when the next occasion of seeing me, interacting with me, like what to say. And additionally, that might sound very hysterical, paranoid. It's a matter of speaking about the illusion of life, Maya, the ancient eternal illusion of life, and simply articulating that awareness and that experience in a contemporary parlance of media and such. Not being inferior. Why is that such an awkward word? Infuriated by that. Not being mad or fearful or greedy or otherwise. But, just acknowledging that realm of beyond evidence and beyond the immediate knowledge of experience that exists and that is introduced within each interaction with every person, because everybody in our life today comes from that realm of what we are less aware of what we know less of. And so we have trust, we have faith, we have some imagination, and we have some dependence upon the semblance of continuity, rather than just attributing everything beyond our immediate experience as some ubiquitous unknown. And there's functionality with that as we continue on our path. What am I even talking about? When we do get to that occasion of thinking about people's plots and strategies, why people are doing what things are seeming like, why are cats ramming up this, that, and the other? Who's doing it? Why are they doing it? Who are they doing it with? Who's colluding with them? And additionally, our minds can get hyper and enveloped in thinking about those things when we already recognize that it's all a stage, it's all illusion, it all exists beyond our ability to control personally and our ability to actually define and confirm personally. Then we have greater patience to be further accurate in our discrimination when there is an increasing priority to do so. To maintain balance and to continue focusing on purpose and priorities. When it increasingly seems that people are plotting and otherwise. And as I mentioned within the past day, ultimately, the theater that we find ourselves within is the theater that we ourselves project. Ultimately, everything comes from the Most High, Elohim, God. And God works through our mind, respectively, to manifest the world around ourselves. When we blame others, we're giving others the power within our mind and that manifestation. When we blame God, we give God the power. And we don't have any power to give God whatever. God, we attribute the power to God. But it's not a matter of blaming God. The point I was getting there was what I usually say: when we blame ourselves, we empower ourselves. But the difference between attributing the cause to God and blaming God, the two different things is that one way of looking at it, of describing that distinction, is like if somebody is like standing at the edge of a cliff and there's a boulder that's right at the tip of the cliff. And that person just standing there, and maybe there's a storm, or maybe there's whatever. I'm just conjuring this example. And then the boulder falls on the person. That's a rather extreme example. Let's just say it's like a stone. The stone falls on the person. The person can blame gravity, but like the person was standing there. My point is that it's a little bit of a feigned example. The difference between attributing it to God and blaming God is this. Gotta work on it now. God is doing it, but God does it through ourselves, our own respective individual selves. So whilst we're in this life, we have some experience of volition, of individual will, and there's purpose for that. And we also have to take responsibility for that. And it's not. This is not like a rebukement or like a shaking the finger at. It's a matter of it's a manifestation. As I said before, it's dependent origination. Excuse me. Just like that belch, I ate whatever I ate that precipitated the causal factor of that belch. Now, the nature of that belch exists beyond my volition or whatever else. I didn't create the dynamics of gas and belches, but I introduced myself into that experience by consuming whatever I consume to belch. So that's kind of like with God and free will, or the perception of free will, because ultimately there is no free will, but in the semblance of ego and life, we have this notion of free will. And one of the important things is not to get caught up with that, and not try to oppose it or get into that slippery slope of conquering. Life is a theater that we project, but that we do not control. What we can do is cultivate stillness and concentration and purpose and peacefulness. And within that, we become increasingly aware of the theaters that others are projecting. Even again, just here's Inception, even our perception of otherness, and in the perception of otherness, perceiving the same qualities that exist within us: autonomy, personal will, and additionally, and the manifestations of theater that come from those perceived concentrations of sentience. For ourselves, it's still a manifestation of ourselves. Me talking to this, presuming that there's others that I'm speaking to or communicating to, is simply a communication of me speaking to the further consciousness that derives from my own. And it's not an ego thing of like everybody being me, because what am I? Descartes. endeavoring back to the point, blame. That stone falling from the cliff onto somebody's head and causing a little scratch. Who's to blame in that? Is it gravity? If we just look at it in terms of like an earthly thing, is it gravity to blame for doing that? If there's a warning sign at the cliff saying, hey, there are little stones here, they fall off the edge, proceed at your own caution. Who's to blame in that scenario? And that's like with life and free will. Everything happens according to the will of God, but it's manifested through the rule of sentience, or through the experience of sentience, or through the volition of sentience. The advent of blame occurs only amidst the dissatisfaction with dissatisfaction, the dissatisfaction with suffering, and the refusal or the defiance, the rebellion against suffering, instead of just acknowledging, there's going to be suffering in this life. Let's understand the nature of it. And if we want to suffer less, what are the causal factors of suffering? Is that a boogie I just put over here, or is that the napkin? That's the napkin. Just for the record, that was not my boogie, that was the napkin. Not certain how much better that may be, but come on, there's levels of uncouthness, and gotta keep proprieties. We were actually getting there, the coherence of the summation. So blame, dissatisfaction, causal factor of suffering is what we're designed, what we're attaching ourselves to, what we're fearful of losing. I'm simply just repeating the Buddha at this point. I'm not just simply repeating. I am repeating the Buddha, but I'm also speaking from the experience and the processing of those teachings. So that's suffering. And as long as we're going to be in this life, as long as we continue to accept nourishment, even as long as we continue to accept breath, we're accepting that nature of suffering. Being empathic has to be suffering. To be genuinely empathic. So, I guess getting over that dissatisfaction in life is simply being reconciled with the existence of suffering. And then what helps in that process is recognizing purpose. We have purpose in this life. We have divine, sacred, beautiful, miraculous purpose in this life. We each do. A universal purpose, but then also a very unique genius of purpose. And a genius ability of manifesting that purpose. Do I utilize that term genius lightly? You betcha. And we're going to wrap this up because we're going on this for a while. Fatigue factor. Is it still expensive? You betcha. That's Minnesota expensive. All right. What's all this congestion about? Must have been done had some oil recently. Yeah. All right. So, anyways, life is a projection. Life is two shorts or a feature film. That was funny. It could have been better with the shorts thing, but anyway. We gotta persevere through the pains, the awkwardnesses, the inaccuracies, the dubiousnesses, and otherwise. So yeah, I think we can go. I think we are ready. Life is a projection, theater, purpose, patience, reconciliation, relationship, marriage, communication, regularity, negotiation, acclamation, and then we go with the evaluation. We just throw that one in there too. That's what a bargain. We'll throw that in there just for free. Just for free. That's what we talk about this moment. That's enough. So the food's gone. I ate it all. Still got some of that hot oil. So we talk about making hot oil. I listened to kinfolk through the years talk about how kinfolk make hot oil with experience from Chinese restaurants, and additionally, and so very, very valuable guidance and instruction. But to be honest, amidst the simplicities here, what we find also works is just like getting a gang of oil, getting a gang of chili pepper crushed, put it in a bowl and let it sit and marinate. Let them pepper essences kind of just blend in the oil, and then it gets red up. It gets red up like some Alabama clay. The kings of Alabama, I didn't talk about that. Too tough. Solution, particularly for kinfolk of African ancestry who don't want to go back to Africa, who want to still have some connection to this land. Family, and additionally don't want to be so rebellious or whatever. Become a king in Alabama. Get a set of land, a province, a municipality, or whatever your size kingdom, but as a collective, congruencies, contiguousness. King of Alabama, become a Bama, and strengthen in numbers, but at the same time still autonomy. It doesn't have to be the entirety of what is perceived or proclaimed as the state at this day, but even a small portion, a parcel, and then connecting with other small parcels and kinfolk of the same ilk and mindset and discipline and materiality. Numbers. There's a migration being manifested at this moment, whether people like it or not. So, anyway, kings of Alabama. And for European kinfolk, we're talking about the kings of Maine. We can talk about the kings. What do I say, Ohio? We're getting further international, to be honest. It's the Great Lakes, it's freshwater, the world got its eyes on it, and so it's going to be difficult to have a sacred claim that's definitively any particularly specific, exclusive homogeneousness, whether it's religious, ethnicity, or otherwise, even mixed. So there are certain hot spots or certain coveted spots on this continent amidst the evolution of civilization on this space. And that have attention from the world, and are going to be very difficult to secure with such exclusivity across the board. The Great Lakes is one area, the coasts are another area, and certain natural locations, particularly the established national parks, are another area. The high points along mountain peaks, and additionally the highest elevation points, are another area. Generally speaking, regionally, as like being high points of contention, and any group, whether it's European, African, Asian, or otherwise, endeavoring to have some type of exclusive land claim on any of us, including the United States as it is at this moment. Any entity, even indigenous, particularly because indigeneity has a lot of healing and restoration to be done in terms of like establishing itself as of having international claims of territory in this unfolding and this evolving, advancing experience of world civilization. So meanwhile, like in the next few generations, it's all going to happen. It's happening. You already know if it's not foreign kinfolk coming here and dissolving the United States, it's from within. People of European ancestry are already the minority within the United States, and the fabric of social union with the United States is so diseased. such that when the political and economic mechanisms that are predicated upon the pretense of democracy become woefully weakened, that's the social fabric, like the foundation of cooperation and understanding as a multiculturalism. It ain't there, and so it just lends itself to fractitiousness. It's just a matter of discerning how that happens, and so we're here to make it. We're here to guide the harmony in an optimal, genuine manner. So, that being said, we give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Blessed love, peace, and Rastafari.